This is the 1430 edition of the Khoodeelaar television channel. Now, we have had disconnections in the past, so hopefully this edition, which is labeled part 5 instead of being labeled part E, we are attempting to make up for some of the things that we could not complete in the earlier ones. Now, this is a piece branded by, boastfully branded by, the Dirty Digger Murdoch scum. Royal exclusive. Here is £1 million wine and you taxpayers' bill for court battles. Now, this is not something that Harry Windsor asked for. His court battles are very much caused by the lies of Fleet Street. And the lies of Fleet Street concerning this particular court battles are similar to the lies the Dirty Diggers. News of this scum, news of these crews perpetrated about Millie Dowler. Millie Dowler, who was murdered by the serial murderer Levi Belfield. So the court battles that the lying Murdoch, dirty Murdoch, Sanders scum is decrying. Our court battles should not have been made necessary and would not have been made necessary had the Fleet Street newspapers not committed wrongs and perpetrated the lies about Harry. So Prince Harry's High Court whines. Now, why is this whines? Why is none of the other court cases reduced to these whines, whines? Are on course to cost taxpayers more than £1 million. Bid to hire a UK police guard cost £502,326 to defend one rejected last month. It aims to overturn that verdict later this year, with the cost likely First of all, about the court cases, if there is any fees that they are apportioning blame on Harry for, that is to do with the fees charged by licensed law traders, then the blame should be placed at the door of the licensed law traders. Then they are gloating, the Sun, on pages 4 and 5, that Spotify has ended the deal with Harry and Meghan. The streaming giant reaches Sussex's an 18 million deal axed after one series. So this is the ditching that they're celebrating. And then there is this evilness called Jeremy Clarkson, who says that murderers of lions and elephants are evil, but they're necessary evil. This is the morality of the dirty digger Murdoch. He is supporting murders of elephants and big creatures by criminals. That is the morality. And they've got the first of the three editorial devoted to gloating against Meghan Markle losing the contract with Spotify. And they're saying some may be shocked to discover that Meghan Markle is not, in fact, the creative genius the likes of Spotify and Netflix invested millions in. We on the Sun reached that conclusion with profound regret some years ago. There is a happy and fulfilling life in abusing his relatives for books sales while launching how is it a recreational court case? In one instance, running up a potential 1 million legal bill for taxpayers in the country he abandoned. So this is all a pack of lies by this scum. He didn't abandon the country. They abandoned him, and they abandoned him because of the racism. And So look at this evil conclusion this evil Clarkson is murderously reaching. So it's a weird conclusion, but if a half-wit with way more money than sense and no moral fiber at all wants to fly to Africa to shoot an elephant, the kindest thing we can do as a nation of animal lovers is let him. This sickness, this sick evilness is doing it again. He apologized, he staged a bogus apology to Meghan Markle after publishing that sick making invitation for people to insult her in indescribable way. So these are the evil. It's not just the ones that are murdering the elephants, but it's him. He's a scum, a smart dog, dirty digger, filth. And there is this two-page spread by the evilness. Can you believe this? It's Trevor, traitor, evilness, depravity, shit, terrible Phillips as well. He says it's not been plain sailing since Windrush, but minorities here say, racist Britain, there is no better place to live in Europe. Fuck off, you shit. Terrible Philip says in The Scum, published at 21:09 hours UK time, which would be 20:09 hours GMT on 16th of June, and updated about the same time on the Scum website. And it says there are many racists living in the UK, but that doesn't make it a racist nation. It's the best place to live in Europe. And he doesn't call them racist, he calls them bigots. And he says, despite efforts by some to portray our country as being irredeemably prejudiced, we are no longer Alf Garner's England. We, who the fuck is we, the fucking mental slave shit? Welcome people who do a fair day's work for a fair day's pay and try to get on with their neighbors, you shit fucking sickness. Our celebrity role models now come in every shape and color. People like ex England's footballer Rio Ferdinand, Alex Scott in sport, and in music Zayn Malik, Leona Lewis, Rita Ora, Dua Lipa all have immigrant roots. Fuck off, you shit. Rita Ora and Dua Lipa are both Muslims. And this fucking shit has not heard of anti Muslim racism in this country. Hey, sure, bacha kafir. This kafir shit admits, let's be honest, fuck off, you shit. Britain hasn't always been kind to people of color. Fuck off. Windrush elders still recall their early days when teddy boys would roam the streets of Nottingham and London going nigger hunting. You fucking shit. And then he says, they were shocked by the hostility fueled by Enoch Powell's Rivers of Blood speech in 1968. I'll read that again. They were shocked by the hostility fueled by Enoch Powell's Rivers of Blood speech of 1968, prophesying race wars in Britain. And then he says, and in recent years, they are humiliating treatment by our own government in the Windrush scandal when many were unjustly threatened with deportation by the Home Office, was a low point in British race relations. Fuck off. And then he goes jumping. All that said, something pretty miraculous taken place in our country, unlike in other parts of the world driven by ethnic conflict. Evil fucking shit. And in the Black Britain, this fucking mental slave shit doesn't have any room for people from Africa and most certainly none from Asia. He says, but Black Britain too is changing. And out of the mix of the Caribbean, Africa, and the UK, something exciting and world beating is emerging. When we go to our parents' and grandparents' homes in Africa and the Caribbean, we are greeted warmly. But nobody expects us to stay. We are the cousins from foreign. Everyone can see the Made in Britain stamp in the way we talk and walk. We are now at home here for good in the UK. I can't wait to see what the next generation of black Brits look like when I make my next film about them in 2048. I'll only be 95. Fuck the shit. Sure, bachcha shit. Here is this entry I'm retrieving from the Wikipedia itself racist, but still having to admit racism in the United Kingdom refers to negative attitudes and views on race or ethnicity within the viewpoints of groups or individuals or existing systematically in the United Kingdom. The extent and the targets of racist attitudes in the United Kingdom have varied over time. It has resulted in cases of discrimination, riots, and racially motivated murders. Racism was uncommon in the attitudes and norms of the British class system during the 19th century, in which race mattered less than social distinction. An African tribal chief was unquestionably superior to an English costermonger. Use of the word racism became more widespread after 1936. Although the term race hatred was used in the late 1920s by sociologist Frederick Hertz, laws were passed in the 1960s that specifically prohibited racial segregation. George Cruikshank's caricaturization of a dinner party in 1819, the dinner party was held by abolitionists of slavery, depicting, and George Cruikshank caricaturized that as showing black people as drunken, aggressive, and sexually promiscuous. Racism has been observed as having a correlation between factors such as levels of unemployment, immigration, and population replacement in an area. Some studies suggest Brexit led to a rise in racist incidents, but Trevor Terrible P. doesn't even mention that. When locals became hostile to foreigners or immigrants, Poles, Romanians, and other European groups have been adversely affected in recent decades. Studies published in 2014 and 2015 claimed racism was on the rise in the United Kingdom, with more than one third of those polled perceiving they were racially prejudiced. However, a 2019 European Union survey, the prevalence of perceived racist harassment towards people of African descent in the UK was the second lowest among the 12 Western European countries surveyed. Sectarianism between British Protestants and Irish Catholics in Northern Ireland has been called a form of racism by some international bodies. It has resulted in widespread discrimination, segregation, and serious violence, especially during partition of Ireland, that is. See also slavery in Britain, and it says that thousands of British families were slave owners in the 17th and 18th centuries. By the mid 18th century, London had the largest black population in Britain, made up of free and enslaved people, as well as many runaways. The total number may have been about 10,000. Some of these people were forced into beggary due to the lack of jobs and racial discrimination. Owners of African slaves in England would advertise slave sales and for recapture runaways. Racism against black people grew after 1860 when race based discrimination was fed by then popular theories of scientific racism. Attempts to support these theories cited scientific evidence such as brain size. James Hunt, president of the London Anthropological Society in 1863, in his paper The Casey review So the Casey review is not, it's not about, it doesn't, its heading is not about racism. It says the Casey review, a review into opportunity and integration. And then it says, so there are references to racism on 7 pages. Now, this is a report that has got more than 300 pages. And this is a report published by the London Metropolitan Police. Now, there is directly a reference to lessons for Great Britain. They says at 824. Employment and physical and social segregation. There is broad acknowledgement of the importance of equality, a sense of belonging, and access to opportunities as the means of tackling integration issues, integration gaps. There are also some differences which highlight some relative advantages of our, that is UK's position. In particular, the United Kingdom has no legal restriction on the collection and analysis of ethnographic and religious data. This allows us to analyze and track education and employment outcomes and understand the size and nature of the issues we face is a more scientific and precise manner than some of the European neighbors. We have seen that this country shares a number of problems with its neighbors in Europe. However, we are in the strong position to learn from them and to use our own assets to forge new and better solutions to integration segregation. Now, this is in contrast to the lying piece given the title as author, the mental slave Trevor Terrible Phillips. Now, Terrible Phillips is being given platforms next week on Sky Television and other television platforms to rehash a so called book based celebration of Windrush, where his elder brother, Trevor Terrible Phillips' elder brother, Mike Phillips, is being again exploited by Trevor Terrible Phillips. I would say the main answer is the money. There cannot be any moral or ethical reason why Mike Phillips would agree to be exploited again. And the other reason, of course, is well, the reason why he is involved, Mike Phillips, is because he can actually get the information, do the research, and do the writing, which Trevor Terrible Phillips cannot. And if we go back to the issue and the case reveals widespread anti-Muslim prejudice, hatred. If we look at the actual coverage or cover-ups in the Fleet Street media, there is persistent anti-Muslim hatred and denial by Fleet Street, including by the Guardian. And if we go back to the references we made earlier in the previous editions, about the private eye, which says that it is critical of Fleet Street, private eye itself is anti Muslim. In the context of the police, especially, the number of holders of quote senior posts in the police who have been Muslim, who have been victimized by the Metropolitan Police, is too high. That is now comparable member of the police from any other faith group, especially from the Asian continent. Most certainly, the proportion of Hindu holders of posts in the Metropolitan Police has been significantly higher, and they have not been vilified or victimized in any way comparable to the vilification and victimization of Muslim holders of police posts in the Metropolitan Police. None of this is being recognized by the criminal, the mental slave shit. Trevor Phillips, in the two-page spread on 24 to 25 of this Come Today. Now, we move to the behavior of the judiciary. At every level of the judiciary, magistrates court, county courts, high court, court of appeal, the so-called Supreme Court, there is a long list of built-in anti-Muslim hostility, which means that all these courts are behaving illegally So the judiciary, the jurisprudence, the evidence of the tendency and the propensity of the And there is no acknowledgement of this in either the proceedings of the House of Commons, the proceedings of the House of Lords or Peers, House of Peers, and in the publication of the activities of the courts in Private Lie. In fact, Private Lie, edited by the midget Ian Pissoff, the current edition of Private Lie, is celebrating the loss of a defamation action by a Muslim conservative donor, MRC. Now, we are not taking a position in terms of the rights of MRC to have any advantage over the person he sued for defamation. What we are saying is that the language used by Private Lie in reporting what the High Court judge allegedly said against MRC, and we are saying that this is couched in a way that is highly prejudicial, and the prejudice based on the Private Lie's anti Muslim bias. There is no evidence that Private Lie has published anything, any report, any account from any of the courts in the United Kingdom where Muslims have been litigants and have pursued cases, claims against individuals based on those individuals' anti Muslim hostility, bias, prejudice, victimization, etc. And this applies to the periodic opportunistic references to the Chinese in mainland China attacking the Muslims in China. And that is actually a coincidence, timed and linked entirely with the USA and the UK foreign policy. The only time that they actually recognize the existence of the Uyghur Muslims, who are mainly originated from Turkish Muslims and were targeted for gang rapes by the Chinese, because the Chinese officially say that the Uyghur women are beautiful and attractive and they should be sexually used and exploited. Very similar to the where the women, Muslim women in Kashmir, in Indian occupied Kashmir, are described and treated by the Hindutva fanatics and Hindutva nationalists who encourage gang rapes and gang murders after gang rapes of Muslim women and girls in Kashmir. And of course, there is the ongoing genocidal attacks on the Muslims in the area called Arakan or the Rakhine state, part of Burma, where Muslims are massacred, raped, genocided, and the policy of the denial of these events maintained by the bureaucracy fronted by the Portuguese former Prime Minister Antonio Guterres is persisting to this day. Today is the Saturday, 17th of June 2023, and if we look at the actual published evidence, we find that the Muslims are not being defended by the UNO at all. Well, 2 years ago, there was a well, this has been repeated now, and there is this attack on the Al Aqsa Mosque in Jerusalem by Israel. It says Israeli forces, Israeli military stormed the Al Aqsa Mosque in Jerusalem, old city, firing stun gun grenades and attacking Palestinians. This is dated the 6th of April 2023. And on the 5th of April, the day before, the item on Al Jazeera was had a world reaction to Israeli attacks at Jerusalem's Al Aqsa Mosque. And the Al Jazeera piece contains pictures too distressing to see. The United Nations, Turkey, United States, Canada, and several other countries, but there is no mention of the United Kingdom. So the mental slave, anti Muslim kafir, Trevor Terrible P. Lips, mocks the people and says, racist Britain? There is no better place to live in Europe. Go to hell, you shaitan. So, this piece by Al Jazeera on the 5th of April 2023 says the incident, which came as Muslims mark the holy month of Ramadan and Jews prepare to begin Passover, has raised fears of wider conflagration. Palestinian fighters in Gaza responded to the Israeli attack with rocket fire while Israeli planes attacked multiple sites in the besieged coastal enclave. Here is how the world reacted to Israel's attacks on Wednesday. So there are items there that I'm not going to repeat because it will take longer time to repeat than there is permissible time available for this broadcast because as I have said, we have been experiencing disconnections on the internet, frequent disconnections earlier today. The United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres, well, this is April, was shocked and appalled by images of Israeli security forces beating people at the Alaska mosque. Reading that again. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres was shocked and appalled by images of Israeli security forces beating people at the Al Aqsa Mosque. His Stefan Dujarric said Guterres viewed images of the violence and beating within the holy site and found it more distressing because it came at a time of a calendar which is holy to Jews, Christians, and Muslims. There should be a time for peace and non-violence. Look at the circumspection and the minimization of the Muslims in that collection. It says holy, the period holy to Jews, Christians, and Muslims. Is Guterres suggesting that the Israeli military were representative of the Jews? Places of worship should only be used for peaceful religious observances, he said. And the point is that this is not something that should be confined to a statement which is itself dubious and anti Muslim biased. It should actually call on the United Nations General Assembly to have emergency sessions to hold to account the attackers of Muslims. Then there is this thing about United States, which is equalizing the Palestinians and the Israeli armies. And it uses the word violence. It doesn't say that the violence is by the militarized Israeli forces against the Muslims, against the Palestinians. And here is a still showing that Israeli military inside the Al-Aqsa Mosque are physically attacking a Palestinian. What is Turkey saying? Is it saying anything different? Turkey's president Rakib Tayyip Erdogan condemned the Israel police raid, calling such acts in the mosque compound a red line for Turkey. And he is quoted as saying, I condemn the vile acts against the first Qibla of Muslims in the name of my country and people, and I call for the attacks to be halted as soon as possible, Erdogan said. The name of this is the politics of repression, the politics of blood, the politics of provocation. Turkey can never remain silent and unmoved in the face of these attacks. Putting a hand on Al Aqsa Mosque and trampling on its sanctity is a red line for us. Turkey denounced the attacks on worshippers as unacceptable, saying they violated its sacred character. Normalization with Israel has begun, but our commitment cannot be at the expense of the Palestinian cause and our principles. Turkish Foreign Minister Mevlut Cavusoglu said on the margins of a NATO gathering in Brussels. These attacks have exceeded the limit. And the Arab League said it called on the United Nations Security Council to intervene to hold Israeli crimes at Al Aqsa Mosque compound. In a statement issued following an emergency meeting in Cairo on Wednesday, the Arab League condemned Israeli assaults. These crimes escalated dangerously in the past days of Ramadan and led to hundreds of injuries and arrests of worshippers, incursions, and deliberate desegregation. I'll read that again. These crimes escalated dangerously in the past days of Ramadan and led to hundreds of injuries and arrests of worshippers, incursions, and deliberate desecration of the sanctity of Al-Aqsa Mosque by extremist Israeli officials and settlers under the protection of the occupation forces. The statement rejected all forms of Israeli violations of Islamic and Christian holy places, especially those aimed at changing the historical and legal status quo at the Al Aqsa Mosque. Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau criticized the Israeli government's inflamed rhetoric and urged it to change its approach to the Palestinian cause and stand with the Palestinians. Christian and Muslim holy sites under a status quo arrangement in place since the 1967 war, condemned Israel's flagrant storming of the compound. Egypt's foreign ministry called for an immediate halt to Israel's blatant assault on Al Aqsa worshippers. Germany, everyone who has an influence on the situation has the responsibility to not pour more oil on the fire and to do everything possible to calm the situation, a German foreign ministry spokesman said. It is essential for Israeli and Palestinian authorities to stay in close contact as well as Jordanian officials who administered the Al Aqsa Mosque, he added. Qatar warned in a statement that Israeli practices will have serious repercussions on the security and stability in the area. And it goes on. And then United Arab Emirates. And there are other statements. The point I'm making is that in the piece that the mental slave shit, Trevor P. leaves, disgracefully exhibiting on pages 24 and 25 of the Dirty Digger Anti-Muslim Shaitan, there is no recognition of anything happening as expressed in those communications and statements and reports. And there is no recognition of the daily violations of the Muslims in Palestine. There is nothing in the British press, nothing in the British television at all. All these sources are Al Jazeera or other countries' outlets. The corruption in Tower Hamlets should talk about this. The owner of a nursery building whose roof collapsed into late last night, Thursday, 15th of June, on the Isle of Dogs, has promised a thorough investigation. Now, what are they talking about here? This is happening in Cross Harbour, Montessori Day Nursery in East London. The owner of a nursery building whose roof collapsed late last night on the Isle of Dogs has promised a thorough investigation as shocked parents are left waiting for answers, including if their kids will be able to go back to the nursery. Photo shared on Twitter earlier today, that is Friday, the 16th of June, by ex councillor Andrew Wood show a huge hole in the nursery extension on the building at Baltimore Wharf, an Oakland Key, which was constructed by developer Ballymore only in 2010. Most of the roof above a classroom has caved in at Cross Harbour Montessori Day Nursery, and Townless Council has issued a dangerous structure notice and demanded the building's current owner, Galliard, get structural engineer to investigate the cause of the collapse. And Peter Golds, the conservative on the councils from that area, incident at nursery school in Cross Harbour this evening. Safety authorities attended and confirmed nobody had been hurt. He is reassuring the fucking liar. Had it been during the day, it would have been different. Have sent full details to council to ensure appropriate investigation. Fuck the shit. This is a racist liar, anti Muslim liar, this Peter Golds. The claim that it has shocked our Armless Council is a lie. Armless Council is not doing the safeguarding duties that is owes to the community for the safety of the buildings. Gilead Homes told My London that although it wasn't the developer who built the property management matters managers the scheme manages the scheme and has launched a thorough investigation. It added that safety and well-being of the children is of critical importance and that it's committed to making the nursery a safe environment. The building was constructed by Ballymore and the wider estate at Baltimore Wharf was sold in 2013. While Ballymore was responsible for the construction, My London understand it's had no further involvement in the operation or maintenance of the estate since then. Andrew Wood, 54, was a councillor in the area for 8 years and lives nearby. He said he had concerns about the quality of the building, which he never reported because it just appeared to be at surface level. Well, his concern is as surface as the surface safety. While he had no evidence or concerns about structural issues, he told My London, in terms of this building, my observations are walked around the society inside because I just looked around. I have not been very impressed by the build quality. So that's more of a superficial thing, like the surface materials being used. I wasn't aware of any structural issues with this building. He added that he is extremely glad that it didn't collapse 4 hours earlier when it would have been full of children and staff because I think there would have been serious injuries. The Timeless Council spokesman said, "We are shocked at the roof collapse and it is fortunate it happened out of nursery hours. Our team visited the site last night to inspect the privately owned building." How the fuck they make the distinction? Privately owned building. Fuck off. The council owned buildings are as unsafe as well. We found the roof extension to be unsafe and we will issue a dangerous structure notice for this section of the building only. The rest of the building is not impacted, it says. We've also referred this incident to the health and safety executive. There is a picture. It's an Asian man or African man. This shit raped young women by he must be South Indian or Tamil or Sri Lankan. This shitbag is called Raghu Singamanani. He ran two massage parlors in North London, where he would lure women with a job before sexually assaulting and raping them. Why do they allow shits like that to have sensitive businesses like massage parlors? For fuck's sake. A North London masseur has been jailed after raping and sexually assaulting four women who he offered jobs at his parlor. Raghu Singamaneni, 50, of London Road, Luton, would lure in his victims with the promise of a job at one of his massage parlors and would sexually assault them during their training. Singamaneni ran two massage parlors on Holloway Road, Islington, and High Road, Wood Green. He would advertise on a jobs application for jobs site, I suppose, for women to come and work at the parlor. He would make appointments to meet the women and then carry out sexual assaults. He's a complete fucking pervert. The first victim who reported the matter to police was just 17 years old and had arranged to meet Singamaneni, Singamaneni for an interview. She told police that she met him at the parlor and he went through the training she would need. She again met Singamaneni at the parlor the next day and he gave her a glass of Prosecco. She told police she then became so intoxicated she was sick. Singamanani then took her to a hotel where he carried out a sexual assault, namely attempting to rape the woman. Just over 2 weeks later, the victim made a complaint at Tottenham police station and Singamanani was arrested and released under investigation while further inquiries were made. A second offense related to a 19-year-old woman who reported an allegation of rape which occurred at her place of work on High Road N22. She stated that Singamanani had asked for a massage, insisted that she drink some vodka, and then raped her. Another offense occurred when a 23-year-old woman arranged to meet Singamanani after answering a job advert. She arranged to meet him at a hotel in Golders Green, and when they entered the hotel room, Singamanani plied her with alcohol and later forcibly removed her clothing and raped her. The fourth victim, a 17-year-old, applied for a job as a masseur and had spoken to a woman about an interview. The woman told her to go to the hotel where she would meet someone to have a trial massage. She was met at the location by Singamanani and they entered a hotel room together before he offered her drinks and drugs, which she accepted. She was then raped by Singamanani. She left the hotel and called a friend, who then called police. It's a long, long, detailed account of this evil one. He was unanimously found guilty on Friday, 31st of March, following a trial at the same court of rape and sexual assault. Well, they've got a error in the word sexually. Should be either sexual assault involving four women. So what's happening? Any update on the migrants that drowned in Greece, in the Sea of the Greece? So it says 17 minutes ago on the CNN, it says Greek migrant boat wreck may be Mediterranean's worst ever tragedy, with hundreds still missing. Now, racist Britain, there is no better place to live in Europe. This shit, Trevor Terrible Phillips, Evilness has not heard of Suella Braverman or the serial incitement to hatred of the migrants issued by Priti Patel. The sinking of a packed migrant boat off the coast of Greece may be the worst tragedy ever in the Mediterranean area, according to the European Union Commissioner. That is only 17 minutes ago. So this is the time is 15:53 GMT. Number of undocumented people arriving on European shores skyrockets in 2023. The sinking of a packed migrant boat off the coast of Greece may be the worst tragedy ever in the Mediterranean Sea, according to the EU Commissioner for Home Affairs, Eva Johansson. Dozens of people were killed and hundreds more left missing when the boat traveling from the coastal city of Tobruk in Libya to Italy capsized off the coast of Greece earlier this week. The true toll of the disaster is yet to become clear. We don't have all the information yet on what has happened, but it seems like this is the worst ever tragedy we have seen in the Mediterranean, she told a press conference in Brussels on Friday. The tragedy has shone a spotlight on the European Union refugee crisis, in which every year tens of thousands of migrants fleeing war, persecution, climate change, and poverty risk treacherous routes to Europe. None of this is mentioned in this grotesque making mental slavery piece by Trevor Terrible Phillips in the Dirty Digger Murdoch Scum. Johansson condemned the role of smugglers who put people on the boats. They are not sending them to Europe, they are sending them to death. This is what they are doing, and it's absolutely necessary to prevent it, she said. Unfortunately, we have seen that coming because since the start of the year there was a new modus operandi with these fishing boats leaving from eastern parts of Libya. And we have seen an increase of 600% of these departures this year, stressing the need to find different ways to fight the smugglers and save lives. Now, my answer to this individual statement is that the European Union has to do, the first thing it has to do is to prioritize saving the people by taking not one, not two, not three, but a dozen separate initiatives in the countries of origin to address all these persecution, poverty, war that these people are forced to flee, to address those. Talking about the smugglers is the simplest, most irresponsible, stupid thing to say. Of course, the smugglers should be tackled. But the smugglers cannot be said to be responsible for the wars, the poverty, the hunger, and the violence that these people are fleeing from their countries in Africa and Asia. So that has to be addressed, and there is no mention of that. There is no mention of the duties owed by the European Union to stop this. So we shall be talking about all of these in due course, and we shall be further diagnosing and dismissing and rejecting and exposing the evil mental slave shit Trevor Terrible P lives and his likes.